Welcome to the Chicago Money Show. I'm Bridget Sullivan-Mermel. Today we're going to talk about developing a community around the topic of money. Our guest is Sara Glakas. She started a community group in Austin, Texas, and it grew exponentially, and now it's nationwide. She helps women in particular, but this can help guys too, go from ignorance, out of it, confused, overwhelmed by money, to hopeful and in charge. I'm so looking forward to talking with her today. Welcome, Sara.
Thank you, Bridget, for having me.
Yeah, thanks. So how did you get involved in the money industry?
I think my first introduction to it was actually working at a family law firm when I was first out of college. When I first moved to Austin, I was working as a legal assistant in a family law firm, and very quickly realized that people in general and women specifically were going into these major financial events without having an idea of what they were actually dividing up. And I was surprised by that. I was a new college grad. I thought that grown-ups knew a lot about money stuff and investing, and it turned out that wasn't the case. So when I saw that, it sparked something in my mind that I would eventually want to be a person that people could rely on to teach them about these important topics.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you use the word grown up because, let me put my glasses on, it's like being a grown up. I think a lot of us, I can just speak for myself, but a lot of us have mixed feelings about that. And taking on the responsibility of a grown up, but then also getting the rewards of being a grown up, that can be something that, tell me more about how you approach that with people.
I find that in my practice or in the groups that I'm speaking to, a lot of people feel like they got to whatever stage they are in life without really understanding that, hopefully they've done some of the right things along the way. They've saved money, they've put money in their 401k and invested in the target date retirement fund that they were put in. But I feel that almost regardless of age, from people just starting out to people who are getting ready for retirement, they feel like they're not ready. They feel like there's a huge gap in what they should know and what they actually know.
Yeah, I think that's right. I really do. So you started this community group where women help women with money. So tell me the story behind it.
Right. So in 2011, a friend of mine and I started something called the Austin Women's Investing Group. We started it on Meetup, and it's still on Meetup. We really started it as a place where women could get together in an all-female environment and talk about exactly these gaps that they feel like they had. So we just wanted the topic to be pretty broad and center around money and investing and finance. In 2011, we were meeting in people's living rooms with, kids and cats running around. But as we've grown and grown over the years, we had to find larger and larger spaces to hold our groups. And certainly once the pandemic hit, in March of 2020, we were forced, like everyone else, to go virtual. So we're still the Austin Women's Investing Group, but we've really been able to go kind of nationwide and worldwide. We've had some members log in from China to go to our monthly meetings, but it's still the same purpose, to get women together in a room talking about the topics that we don't often find ourselves discussing with family or friends.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because another Austin person, person I associate with Austin is Brene Brown, who talks about vulnerability. And I think that in a group of people, especially who aren't relatives, you can actually let it go a little bit more and maybe be more vulnerable and not be afraid to say, I don't know this, or I do know this, let me help you, or this happened to me, or this is how I feel about what happened to me. Is that the kind of thing that you work with in the group?
That's exactly it. Whether we're meeting virtually or actually in a room together, which now we're meeting again in person, we tend to sit in a circle or sit in a way that we're all facing each other. Because while we have an expert come in and lead us through a topic, you are learning from the woman sitting next to you or the woman sitting across from you who's able to say, oh, I did this and it really paid off, or I wish I had done this differently. And so we're learning from the women around us. It leads to incredibly meaningful conversations and creating the space where women can come in and be vulnerable and recognize that other people are vulnerable coming in. I think it really helps people let down their guard and put their defenses down when they come into the group, and we're all just people who are sitting in a circle, trying to learn how to make better financial decisions.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you have any examples of people who started out at the beginning and how it's worked out for them?
I do. There's I would say one that I would characterize as a success story. Mm-hmm. When we were meeting in coffee shops, I remember we were having this one meeting and the room was so full, there were people sitting on the floor. And so I was thinking, like, oh my gosh, I'm a little bit embarrassed that we're having, a meeting and people need to sit on the floor. But after that meeting, a woman reached out and she said, after this meeting, my partner and I have realized that we don't want to go down the road that we're going down. They had been going down the lifestyle creep road. They had the big fancy house and the high income and the fancy cars. What they wanted to do was something completely different. They wanted to stop working earlier. They wanted to go on the road. And so this woman and her partner came in and we created a 10-year plan based on what came out of that Austin Women's Investing Group meeting. And so I think it was, they are now implementing the plan, at least, I would say they're 85% implemented, but it was a really, I don't know, when I hear those stories, people come up to me and they say, I made these changes because of something I learned in a meeting. And you can't create that. You can't create that in a TikTok social media post, or you even almost can't create it in a one-to-one meeting with someone. There's really something special about a community getting together and really to spark people's imaginations, I think.
Yeah, I really agree. And, you mentioned the topic of meaning and how meaning is for people when they can connect on different topics. And I think that, well, for me, that totally lights me up because I really love the topic of meaning. But it's like money generally isn't the most important thing to most people. It really is not. But there is some other most important thing. It could be creativity, it could be achievement, it could be nature, it could be giving, it could, there's all kinds of different things that is the most important thing. And money is a great tool to help you get there. And so talking about what's the most important thing to me and how does money help me get better at those things, that's going to make people feel great.
Absolutely. And that is ultimately the entire purpose of the Austin Women's Investing Group and why we keep it going. We're run by volunteers. No one is making money from this venture. It really is those stories and those experiences that people have after they leave the meeting that make it, for me, that makes my job meaningful. And it's a way to to use my job and my expertise to help the broadest number of people, maybe people who can't afford or don't need an investment advisor. But it still allows us to reach just all of these people and also piggyback off of the experiences of, at this point, thousands and thousands of women. It's not one person's expertise and experience. It's 2,800 women's expertise and experience. And it just, it's incredible. If you're ever able to be in Austin during a meeting, we would love to have you because it's really an incredible experience.
Well, I do get to Austin, so that'll be fun. So let's talk about the 10-year plan. So 10 years, that seems like that would overwhelm a lot of people. So how do you break that down with people?
Right. I think the 10-year plan is probably the farthest that you can go. I find the 10 years is helpful because it's far enough away that you can really see some good effects from compounding. I think in the Austin Women's Investing Group and advising women, we talk about compounding all the time. We talk about why we're investing, why are we taking these risks? And I think that when you start putting figures in projections, after 10 years, you can see some real progress in a way that, 1-year progress, 3-year progress, maybe is not that impressive to people, maybe won't hold their attention or capture their imagination. But the 10-year plan is far enough away where you can really set some things in motion to really build wealth over time, whether it's the compounding or compounding combined with debt pay down. But it's not so far away that people can't imagine being 10 years older. Almost everyone can imagine being 10 years older from where they are now. Yeah. And so you can take that 10 years and back into, well, this is where we want to be in year 5. This is where we want to be in year 3. This is where we want to be in year 1. So it almost naturally becomes a roadmap that can be broken down into smaller chunks. Where, the 30-year financial plan, where are any of us going to be in 30 years? Who knows? That's even harder to imagine than the 10 years.
Yeah, well, and it's like, I want to make sure I'm not goofing that up so that I won't be able, I'll have big problems 30 years from now. But that's hard. That's as far as I can really take it. I'm not thinking, okay, I'm 30 years from now. It's just, and if you think about 30 years ago, how much different if you happen to be over 30, how much different your life is, and how much different the world is. There's so many things that change in the world in 30 years. But 10 years, it's like, okay, that I can see. And the other thing that I tend to do when I'm talking about plans is say, okay, and this is something I've really picked up from clients, is like, okay, what age am I going to be then? What age are maybe my kids or my spouse or the people that are important to me? What ages are people going to be? And that helps people think, okay, that's where we'll be. My kids will be in high school then. My kids will be in college then. Or my kids will be out of college then. Or that helps people like kind of get over that leap of like what's going on right now to really think, okay, well, what do I really want in the long term?
Right. I think that's so powerful. And it's one of the powerful things of working with an advisor is that person, that client, can hear the stories and the stages that our other clients went through and can get that information. And I think that's also the power of meeting in groups. If you are a diverse group of people, you are hearing how other people went through these stages because each of us is learning this for the first time. As we're, learning how to go through life and what might happen and what can happen and what we need to plan for, that, I think, men or women, I think we all like to meet in groups so that it's the most efficient way to get the most amount of information from people. Yeah. And so certainly you're right. The 10 years it's a little bit of a magic number. It's a little bit arbitrary, but we can all imagine that at least when we're grown-ups, we will be similar in 10 years to what we are now. Maybe children won't be the same, but grown-ups will probably more or less be the same, and so it makes it a little bit easier to envision the benefit of making and implementing a plan today.
Great. So we're going to take a break here. Stay tuned for more Chicago Money Show with our guest, Sara Glakas.
Do you want to know what makes Chicago great at 8? It's me. It's Cooking with Tittle. Bon appetit, let's eat. For more than 20 years, Cooking with Tittle has brought you sizzling eats and titillating treats that you can't beat anywhere else. So tune in to CAN TV 19 this week and every week for Cooking with Tittle and more amazing, unique, and homegrown Chicago programs.
Welcome back. We're here talking with Sara Glakas about money and community. So, Sara, you talk a lot about the bag lady syndrome. Let's dig into that a little bit. Tell me more about what that is and how you talk to people about it.
Sure. For people who don't know or haven't experienced bag lady syndrome, either for themselves or for a loved one, it's the way that we talk about it at Black Barn is it's typically women who come in with plenty of resources, but assume that something is going to happen to leave them with no money and no resources, and they will end up with nothing. And it's a real fear. You can see it almost physically manifest itself when women come in with bag lady syndrome. They are incredibly anxious. They do not feel comfortable talking about money. And it takes a while to convince someone or give them the data and the evidence they need to let go a little bit of it. And so it's something that we see relatively frequently with women. Really, it's almost at all ages, but tends to, I think, really kick in, maybe 50s, 60s, or even later.
Yeah, it's interesting to me because it seems to me that one of the phenomena that I don't know if people appreciate that much is that women who are, say, 70, they could have gone, and I had a previous guest on who's like, I grew up and it was all a men deal with money and you don't have to do anything and don't worry about it. And that was Barbara Houston. And she's, I think she's 75 now. And that was actually a cultural norm. I mean, I don't think that really, for a lot of people, that wasn't what they experienced, but it was like the cultural, this is okay, this attitude's okay. And I'm kind of in the middle of this because I don't really have friends or people that I know, women friends, that really had that expectation. I'll never have a job. I don't have to engage with this at all. Somebody else is taking care of this. But I can see clients and friends who are 10 years older. I'm 60, friends and clients who are 70, who they're in that group. And then friends and clients who are 50 or younger who are like, what is going on here? Why is this even a thing? So it's confusing to me. It's interesting to hear that you say that you hear about it from younger women too. And I think that it's not actually a money issue. It's an engagement issue and an abandonment fear. Like just your basic fear of nobody's going to want me, nobody's going to take care of me, I'm going to be abandoned and I won't be able to deal with it. My 2 cents. Anyway, tell me more.
I am so glad you said that because I thought that was going to be my hot take on your show was that it seems to be a combination of anxiety around a topic that tends to make people anxious. The idea that if I make a mistake, it'll be catastrophic. So I can't make any mistakes. So a fear of making catastrophic mistakes paired with the fear that, whether it's based in reality or based on societal messaging that women get, that when you are old, that you will not be needed and may in fact be discarded. Yeah. Right. So it's a very deep-seated and very difficult to remedy that type of thinking and it's not uncommon. And I think it starts kicking in as women get older. And I think you're right. It's a fear of being abandoned or a fear of almost being, having no money and therefore being despised. Right. That really kicks in. And it makes it very difficult, I find, to convince women that they are, they're worthy of the experiences that they can have once, especially they reach retirement age. So, they're worthy of spending the money that they saved, and they're worthy of some of the creature comforts that maybe would make life easier or more fulfilling. And because at least when I see it, it tends to manifest itself as some deprivation, right? I can't spend money because then I'll become a bag lady, right? I have to always have the money because that's what is keeping me from this outcome.
Yeah, and the anxiety is somehow helpful. Like,
right, or unstoppable.
I'm on my guard. I'm worried about this, so that is doing something. Like this is helping because I'm worried about this. I'm doing something.
Yes, the flight or fight response kicking in for people on seemingly, at least what I often see as innocuous financial decisions. Right. This or that. What can I afford? What can I not afford? Oftentimes, whatever the decision is, they're spending a lot of energy, but the decision is not, it has no bearing on their actual financial position. So it's, I think I have a lot of clients who are working very hard at overcoming that, and they overcome it with evidence and data and track records. If you have not typically overspent, what makes you think you're going to turn into the person that does overspend? And, eventually I think it leads to better outcomes, but it does take effort and repetition and giving people evidence to overcome their anxieties.
Yeah, I think that's interesting because it's kind of a combination of listening to people and, evidence helps, but like the other thing is that I think there might be a misconception that people with higher income or higher net worth don't experience this. I was talking to someone yesterday who knew an older woman who was experiencing this, and they had $6.5 million. So that is like a lot of money, and also a lot of social support. Like that was the other thing. It's like this person has a lot of people that care about them too. So it was just unusual to me on many levels. So what you're saying is some data, but again, the 6.5 million isn't helping, right? But then also, I guess, like looking back, okay, what's happened in the past? How have you dealt with, how have you dealt with financial setbacks before? Oh, look at now. You're at this age and you have this much. What else? And I'd be interested to find out what else they're worried about, because it might be like it's that, and the money is just a substitute.
Right. I mean, I come across all the time, and I'm sure you do too, that many of the issues that clients are coming with are not financial issues. It's something else. It's deeper. It's something, it's behavioral. It's emotional. That you're right. It takes a conversation, and it takes a very deep level of trust for someone to let you in to tell you what they're actually worried about. That it's, that they imagine that the end is being a bag lady under the bridge when, along the way it's, how valued am I? Who can I trust? How do people see me? How are things changing as I'm progressing through life? And those are, going back to vulnerability, like how, you have to be very vulnerable and really trust the person that you're talking to about those things.
Well, it seems like the idea is like when I'm the most vulnerable, I will be abandoned. And that's kind of probably one of the main fears there. Like I will be very vulnerable and abandoned. And right. Like you said, despised, like it's not even abandoned, like, which is like that's a lot. That's a lot of baggage for, It's,
right.
Yeah.
And I think as society too, as society too, it's what we learn from the people around us. If everyone has the stories of, the women who were stay-at-home moms whose husbands left them and divorced them and, married someone new. So there is something that happens that people internalize, as you go through life, people that you trust can leave you, and it builds up. Even if it didn't happen to you, you've heard the stories, and I think it builds up over time.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just completely change the subject and move to something a little more cheerful. You are a Division III basketball champion. So can you tell me how the skills that you learned in college to work on a team and win this championship have translated into your money life?
Yeah, I mean, so many. I will say that there's probably two that I think about almost on a daily basis. One of them is at WashU, we practiced the basics a lot. So we did a lot of layups, a lot of open jump shots, learning how to do the basic things well so that it almost becomes muscle memory and you can start relying on it in games. Because, the other side of that is you do all of this preparation and then you play the game, and there are factors that are completely out of your control, and you are subject to, the temperature of the gym, what plays is the other team running, how are the referees, does someone get injured? There are all of these factors, and you have to be able to adapt to it. So no one goes into a game knowing how it will end, right? And no one goes into a game, or they shouldn't go into a game thinking they know exactly how it's going to go. But that doesn't mean you don't have a plan. So, thinking about these things with the financial planning process, certainly the markets, the stock market, the bond market, the real estate market, the interest rate market, there are so many things that we do not have control over. We may as well not waste time and energy pretending like we have control over them, but we can prepare and do the easy things like saving money, spending less than you earn, contributing to and maxing out your retirement accounts, investing instead of just building up cash for decades and decades and decades. There are all of these things that a regular person can do and practice them over and over again until they become muscle memory.
Yeah, that's very interesting too. And I would say learning about money. People think that financial experts have just learned it all and don't keep learning more, but it's a constantly changing field. So you have to keep engaged with it in order to keep making the decisions and deal with what's the latest and what's come up. So we're running out of our time together, unfortunately. What would you say is, in 1 minute, what's our, actually in 30 seconds, what's your main takeaway? What do you want people to remember?
I want people to remember that you can have conversations around money and investing and finance with the people around you, family members, especially women. Do not keep these conversations tucked away. The women around you want to have these conversations. You can build your own mini community of, a trusted investing group, and you don't have to be experts. Just listening to people's experiences, being willing to share your own and help each other out. It's way easier than going it alone and trying to do it by yourself and learn everything that there is to know, when you can do some good to the women around you by starting to open up with those conversations.
So start out being vulnerable. I love this. Okay, so if people want to find out more about you, Sara, how do they go about that?
The Austin Women's Investing Group can be found on Meetup. We meet once a month, and if you're in the Chicago area or anywhere else, you can meet with us virtually. Black Barn Financial can be found at blackbarnfinancial.com. We can also be found on LinkedIn, and we are happy to speak to anyone who'd like to learn more about one or the other.
Thank you so much, Sara. My name's Bridget Sullivan Mermel. I'm a family financial planner, and I love helping people with their money. You can find out more about me at www.sullivanmermel.com. Check out this show's website at chicagomoneyshow.com. Sign up for our newsletter, and so you can get a heads up before the show. I've got a special question for my viewers, and that is, are you involved in a community group about money that's based in Chicago? I'd love to hear from you. If you are, please email at ask@chicagomoneyshow.com. Thanks for watching.